In the heart of the Egyptian desert, where golden sands stretch endlessly toward the horizon, rises a monument older than empires, older than memory itself. The Great Sphinx of Giza sits half buried, half revealed, as though the desert itself struggles to decide whether to conceal or to unveil its presence. With the body of a lion and the face of a human, it stares eastward, unblinking, as the sun ascends each morning over the horizon. For thousands of years, its gaze has remained steady, indifferent to time, storms, and the fleeting rise and fall of kings. To the traveler approaching it, the Sphinx is more than stone. It carries an aura of weight, of silence, heavy with secrets. Its eroded features seem almost alive, as though they have witnessed things too vast to speak of, too ancient to fit within the pages of history. Standing before it, one cannot help but feel the presence of something greater, something that connects the earth, the sky, and the forgotten chapters of our past. The Egyptians themselves looked upon the Sphinx with reverence, yet even they admitted its origins were cloaked in mystery. Was it built by their ancestors or inherited from a world older still? Was it a monument of kingship or a marker of something cosmic, something eternal? The silence of the Sphinx offers no answer, only an invitation to wonder. Over the centuries, the sands have risen to swallow its body, only to retreat again at the hands of those determined to uncover it. Each rediscovery has brought awe, yet never clarity. Each excavation, each study, has only deepened the riddle. The Sphinx does not yield its secrets easily, and perhaps that is why it remains one of the greatest enigmas the world has ever known. It is more than a monument. It is a question carved into stone, a threshold between memory and mystery. To ask what lies beneath the Sphinx is to ask what lies beneath human history itself. Could it be that the guardian of Giza keeps watch over knowledge older than Egypt, older even than the civilizations we know? The possibility lingers, drawing seekers and dreamers closer, generation after generation. If you are fascinated by these mysteries, if the thought of lost civilizations and hidden truths stirs your imagination, then stay with us as we explore the secrets of the Sphinx and the worlds it may conceal. And if you enjoy films like this one, remember to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps keep the search for hidden history alive. The Great Sphinx does not merely exist as a monument of stone, it presides as a guardian of time itself. For over 4.5 millennia, according to the traditional view, it has sat immovable against the harsh winds of the Sahara. Yet its true presence goes beyond the measurements of archaeologists and historians. It is not simply an object to be studied, but a living enigma, a sentinel that seems to defy its own material nature. The sands that surround it shift and rise like a tide, but the Sphinx endures, half buried, half revealed, always watching, always waiting. Its gaze is fixed toward the east, where the sun rises each morning across the horizon. For ancient eyes, this alignment was no coincidence. The Sphinx was seen as a cosmic witness, a figure whose sight connected earth with sky, man with eternity. Day after day, century after century, its stone eyes have followed the dawn, greeting the first light with a patience that belongs not to humanity, but to eternity. One wonders if its gaze is meant not merely to honor the sun, but to keep vigil over something deeper, a truth hidden beneath the desert's shifting veil. The lion's body conveys strength and dominion, a ruler over the wilderness, while the human face suggests wisdom and consciousness. This fusion has inspired endless interpretation. To some it represents the mastery of intellect over raw power. To others it is a symbol of duality, of the balance between man and beast, spirit and matter. Such symbolism is not easily exhausted, which is why the Sphinx has never been reduced to a single, simple explanation. Each generation that encounters it projects new meanings, yet the monument itself remains silent, unmoved by human imagination. Empires rose along the Nile and fell into dust, yet the Sphinx stood unchanged. Pharaohs built their pyramids within its shadow, but they too succumbed to time. Even the Greeks and Romans, who absorbed much of Egypt into their cultural landscape, regarded the Sphinx as a relic of an age beyond memory. To them, as to countless others, it seemed eternal, a puzzle no dynasty could claim fully as its own. It stood as an observer rather than a participant, a figure carved into stone, yet embodying something that refused to decay. This role as a watcher extends beyond the physical. The Sphinx became a metaphor for the permanence of mystery. Civilizations flourish, their knowledge expands, their monuments gleam for a season, but sooner or later they fade into ruin. Yet mystery does not fade. It endures like the desert sky, waiting for those who come later to ask the same questions once more. The Sphinx embodies that persistence of the unknown, reminding us that human ambition is fleeting when compared to the enigmas of time. Pilgrims, conquerors, and scholars all recorded their awe when standing before it. Some saw it as an oracle, others as a riddle. The Greeks even projected their own myth upon it, imagining their tale of the Sphinx that questioned Oedipus. This reimagining shows how strongly the statue inspired new stories in each culture it encountered. Its face, worn by the desert winds, seemed capable of holding countless interpretations, as though its silence invited voices to fill the void with their own legends. Yet silence has a power greater than words. The Sphinx does not need to speak because its very presence is a statement. It tells us that human eyes are not the only judges of time, that stone itself can become a witness. Every line of erosion, every missing piece, every scar carved by nature's hand is testimony that it has endured forces that would erase entire civilizations. It does not rise to declare victory over time, but simply remains, its watch unbroken, its vigil unending. Imagine the countless dawns it has seen. Imagine the shifting stars across the millennia, the endless caravans crossing the desert below, the rise of temples and the fall of armies. All these pass like shadows before it, and still it waits. In that waiting, it almost appears alive, as if holding within its stony silence memories far older than any written record. To stand before it is to feel the weight of history pressing in silence, not as knowledge, but as presence. What makes the Sphinx more than stone is precisely this aura of presence. Its stillness draws the imagination, its survival demands explanation, and its silence refuses conclusion. It does not merely watch the desert, it watches us, as though measuring our attempts to comprehend it. Perhaps that is its true role, not to provide answers, but to test the patience of those who seek them. And so the Sphinx remains, the eternal watcher of the desert. It has no voice, yet it speaks in silence. It has no movement, yet it commands the gaze of all who approach. It is not merely a ruin, not merely a monument, but a riddle carved into existence. The longer one looks, the more one begins to suspect that its gaze does not end at the horizon. It looks inward, into time itself, keeping secrets that no passing empire has ever unlocked. If the Sphinx is a riddle, then where is its answer? Some say the answer lies not in the monument itself, but beneath it. Ancient whispers, carried across centuries, speak of hidden chambers concealed under its pores, tunnels and vaults holding knowledge sealed away from the world. To follow this thread, one must turn to the voices of the past, those who recorded what they believed lay beneath the guardian of stone. Long before modern archaeology, long before radar scans and seismic readings, there were stories. stories that survived the ages, whispered from scribe to traveler, from chronicler to conqueror. Ancient texts and fragments of legends suggest that the Sphinx was more than a monument. It was a marker, a gateway to something hidden. These whispers drifted across cultures, preserved in scrolls and manuscripts, in tales told by the fires of nomads, and in the writings of curious historians. One of the earliest voices to comment on Egypt's mysteries was Herodotus, the Greek historian who walked its temples in the 5th century BCE. He recorded tales of hidden chambers and secret passages, of labyrinths beneath the land of the pharaohs that led to forgotten knowledge. While he never described the Sphinx directly in such terms, later generations wove his accounts into the fabric of speculation, imagining that the silent guardian itself marked the entrance to such vaults. His words gave legitimacy to an idea that would not easily fade. Centuries later, Arab chroniclers added their own layers to the legend. In the writings of al-Makrizi and others, we find references to hidden passages under the pyramids and the Sphinx. Some spoke of inscriptions detailing worlds before the flood, of treasures sealed by priests who feared their knowledge would be lost to catastrophe. To these writers, the monuments of Giza were not just tombs and statues, they were time capsules designed to withstand the destruction of ages and to preserve secrets for a future humanity. One particularly evocative account tells of the Sphinx as the guardian of an underground hall, where records from a forgotten civilization were stored. These stories echo across cultures, resembling myths of libraries preserved from a golden age, knowledge saved from a world-ending disaster. They tell of books of wisdom, crystal devices, or tablets of stone containing the story of mankind before the memory of Egypt. For many, these were not simply allegories, but fragments of an ancient truth too extraordinary to dismiss entirely. Even in medieval times, when much of Egypt was buried in sand, these tales continued to circulate. Travelers spoke of seeing openings near the pores of the Sphinx, though often quickly covered again by shifting dunes. Some claimed that attempts were made to dig beneath it, only to be abandoned out of fear or because of sudden misfortunes. Such stories deepen the aura of secrecy, suggesting that forces beyond mere nature protected whatever might lie below. Legends do not survive without reason. They may transform over time, details may shift, but their persistence often points to something that refuses to be forgotten. The whispers of chambers beneath the Sphinx persisted across cultures and centuries, suggesting that somewhere in the past a seed of truth was planted. Whether it was fact or merely the human need to see meaning in stone, the legend of hidden knowledge beneath the guardian of Giza would not die. Some scholars suggest that these stories were symbolic, allegories for wisdom hidden in plain sight, for the mysteries of life carved into monuments. Others insist they are literal accounts distorted by time but pointing toward real structures beneath the sand. To those who believe, the Sphinx does not stand alone as a monument of stone, but as the sentinel of something buried, something waiting. The appeal of such tales lies not only in mystery, but in the promise of connection to a forgotten past. If chambers exist beneath the Sphinx, what could they hold? Perhaps the chronicles of a civilization lost to flood and fire, perhaps devices of knowledge beyond comprehension, perhaps nothing but empty stone. Yet the stories insist otherwise. They promise that beneath the pores of the guardian lies something that should not be ignored. Through centuries, these whispers reached the ears of explorers and researchers. They stirred curiosity and invited speculation. Could the stories of Herodotus, of Arab chroniclers, of medieval travelers be more than myth? Could the sands conceal not just stone, but a hidden chamber? The legend grew stronger as modern tools began to probe the ground beneath the Sphinx, and the possibility of an underground secret moved from rumor to scientific intrigue. If the scrolls and stories are to be believed, the Sphinx is not merely a symbol, of mystery, it is a key. And like all keys, it suggests a locked door waiting to be opened. Modern voices would eventually take up the quest, armed not with scrolls and stories, but with science and instruments capable of peering beneath the desert floor. Their findings would stir debate, ignite controversy, and keep alive the question first posed by ancient whispers. In the late 20th century, modern science turned its gaze toward the Sphinx with tools that ancient chroniclers could never have imagined. Seismic readings, ground-penetrating radar, and other technologies allowed researchers to listen to the earth beneath the monument. What they found reignited age-old speculation. Voids, anomalies, and hollow spaces beneath the pores and along the body of the Sphinx. The idea of an underground chamber shifted from myth to possibility. One of the most discussed studies took place in the 1990s when teams conducted seismic surveys around the Sphinx. Their instruments recorded areas of low density, suggesting cavities beneath the monument. While mainstream Egyptology dismissed these as natural fissures, others argued that the patterns indicated man-made structures. The possibility of deliberate chambers beneath one of the most enigmatic monuments in the world was enough to spark controversy that continues to this day. Researchers pointed to a particularly intriguing anomaly beneath the front pores of the Sphinx. This was the very spot where legends had long placed a hidden entrance. To some, this coincidence was too striking to ignore. Could the ancient stories have preserved a memory of something real, something deliberately constructed and concealed? If so, what purpose would such a chamber serve, and why was it hidden? Theories quickly multiplied. Some suggested it was the fabled Hall of Records, a legendary library said to contain the wisdom of an age before Egypt. Others speculated that the chamber might hold royal tombs or treasures sealed away in the earliest dynasties. Still others entertained the possibility of a completely unknown purpose, something outside the framework of accepted history. Whatever the truth, the notion of a chamber beneath the Sphinx was too powerful to dismiss lightly. Skeptics countered that natural processes could explain the anomalies. Limestone is prone to fissures and cavities, and the desert sands shift in ways that confuse instruments. To them, the suggestion of hidden vaults was an example of wishful thinking, a projection of human imagination onto geological quirks. Yet even skeptics admitted that the data was unusual, that something beneath the Sphinx defied easy explanation. Secrecy deepened the mystery. Some expeditions announced preliminary results, only for their findings to vanish into silence. Permissions to excavate were often denied or delayed, feeding suspicion that authorities were reluctant to reveal what lay beneath. To those already convinced of hidden knowledge, these restrictions seemed confirmation. Why restrict research unless there was something to hide? Whispers circulated of attempts to open passages beneath the monument, of sealed doors and blocked tunnels. Rumors claimed that discoveries had been made but withheld from the public. Others suggested that governments and institutions feared what would be revealed, knowledge that might rewrite history and unsettle long-accepted narratives. The absence of clarity became as potent as discovery itself, for mystery thrives in silence. The possibility of a hidden chamber beneath the Sphinx is not a matter of simple curiosity. It challenges the very framework of human history. If such a chamber exists, and if it contains records from an earlier time, it could alter our understanding of civilization's beginnings. Instead of Egypt as the cradle of complex culture, we might find evidence of something far older, something long forgotten and buried deliberately. This idea provokes resistance precisely because it is so disruptive. To admit the possibility is to admit that the past is not as settled as textbooks suggest. It is to open the door to a lost chapter of human history, one that may hold truths we are not prepared to face. Whether filled with wisdom, artifacts, or silence, the chamber beneath the Sphinx, if it exists, carries the weight of a mystery that humanity has sought for generations. Legends placed it there, science has hinted at it, secrecy has obscured it, and yet the question persists: what lies beneath the pores of the Sphinx? If the chamber should not exist according to conventional history, perhaps that is the strongest reason to suspect it does. And if it does, the monument before us may not belong entirely to the Egyptians we know, but to a far older story carved into the bedrock of time. To confront this possibility, one must turn to the evidence of age itself. The Sphinx does not only hide secrets beneath its pores, it bears them upon its weathered body. The erosion that marks its surface tells a tale that challenges everything we think we know about when and by whom this guardian of stone was created. For generations, the Sphinx was assumed to belong to the age of the Old Kingdom, crafted during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra around 2500 BCE. This view became orthodoxy, repeated in books and museums, accepted as fact by scholars and the public alike. Yet the monument itself resists such simple assignment. The stone body bears scars that whisper of an age older than the pharaohs, older perhaps than Egypt itself. The most striking evidence comes from the patterns of erosion etched into its surface. Unlike the surrounding pyramids, which show the wear of wind and sand, the Sphinx's body is marked by deep vertical fissures and rounded grooves. Geologists have argued that these features resemble the effects of long exposure to heavy rainfall, not desert winds. Such rains have not touched the Giza Plateau since long before the rise of the Old Kingdom, suggesting that the Sphinx may date back to a time when the Sahara was still green. If true, this pushes the origins of the Sphinx back thousands of years, perhaps to a period before recorded Egyptian history. The idea unsettles traditional timelines, for it suggests that the people who carved the monument were not the pharaohs of dynastic Egypt, but an unknown civilization, one that flourished in a forgotten epoch. Who these builders were and what knowledge they possessed remains an open question. The theory gained attention in the late 20th century when geologists such as Robert Schoch argued that water erosion on the Sphinx AS body indicated an age of at least 7,000 years, if not more. This would place its construction in a prehistoric period, long before the pyramids, long before the pharaohs. Critics resisted fiercely, arguing that such a conclusion threatened to unravel the established chronology of human civilization. Yet the stone itself seemed to bear silent testimony, indifferent to human debates. If the Sphinx predates Egypt, then the implications are vast. It suggests that an advanced culture existed on the Nile before the rise of the dynasties, a culture capable of carving monumental architecture from bedrock aligned with celestial movements, embodying symbolism that would later be absorbed into Egyptian tradition. Egypt would not then be the birthplace of such wonders, but the inheritor of a legacy far older. This possibility ties the Sphinx to myths of a forgotten golden age, a time when humanity's reach was greater than we remember. Legends of Atlantis, of pre-flood civilizations, of knowledge preserved through catastrophe, suddenly take on new resonance. The Sphinx may not only be a monument of Egypt, but a survivor of a world erased by time, a relic of builders whose memory was swallowed by flood and desert. Skeptics argue that such speculation goes beyond evidence, that natural erosion can be interpreted in many ways, that no definitive proof links the Sphinx to a pre-dynastic civilization. Yet the debate itself keeps the possibility alive. For every voice that insists the Sphinx belongs firmly within Egypt's dynastic age, another insists the stone body tells a different story, one that mainstream history refuses to acknowledge. The weathering of the Sphinx is more than a geological question. It is a challenge to how we perceive the past. If we accept that human history may be far older and more complex than we have believed, then the Sphinx becomes not merely an Egyptian monument, but a bridge to a forgotten world. Its body, worn by storms older than Egypt, becomes a witness to ages that textbooks have not yet written. The idea that the Sphinx predates the pharaohs also reshapes our understanding of its role. It may not have been carved as a symbol of royal power, but as something far greater, a monument meant to preserve memory across cataclysms. It could be a message, deliberately constructed to survive the end of a world, carrying forward a fragment of truth for those who would come after. If the Sphinx was inherited by Egypt rather than created by it, then much of its mystery becomes clear. The pharaohs may have restored and reinterpreted it, integrating it into their own symbolic system, but the monument itself belonged to an earlier age. Its silence is not that of a creation awaiting meaning, but of a relic already ancient, already heavy with secrets, long before the first dynasties rose from the Nile. Such a possibility leads inevitably to deeper questions. If the Sphinx was built before the pharaohs, who built it and why? Was it carved by a people whose memory has been erased, or by survivors of a cataclysm remembered only in myth? If it truly endured from a world before Egypt, then perhaps its builders were not entirely lost, but left behind a message in stone, waiting for us to listen. The possibility that the Sphinx predates the pharaohs inevitably draws us toward one of the most persistent themes in ancient myth: the memory of a great flood. Across cultures, from the stories of Mesopotamia to the biblical account of Noah, from Hindu epics to Native American traditions, echoes of a cataclysm resound, a deluge that swept across the earth, erasing civilizations, cleansing the world, and leaving only fragments of what once was. Could the Sphinx itself be one of those fragments, a survivor from a forgotten world drowned beneath the tides of time? Geological evidence tells us that the Sahara was not always the desert we see today. Thousands of years ago it was green, watered by rains and rivers, a fertile land capable of sustaining life on a scale unimaginable in the current climate. If the Sphinx bears marks of rainfall, it must have witnessed that earlier world, one that faded long before the age of the pyramids. Its very erosion becomes a testimony to an environment that no longer exists, and to builders who lived in a time far different from our own. This vision aligns with the flood myths. Imagine a civilization thriving in the fertile lands of a prehistoric Nile, building monuments not as tombs or temples, but as records, as anchors of memory designed to outlast destruction. Then came the flood. Whether caused by melting glaciers, rising seas, or cosmic events, the waters surged across continents, erasing cities and scattering survivors. When the waters receded, much had been lost, but the Sphinx remained, scarred yet unbroken, a monument that still stood to tell a story no one could fully understand. Myths often describe survivors who preserved fragments of their knowledge, passing it on to future generations. In Egypt, this memory may have taken shape in the myths of Thoth, the god of wisdom, or in stories of divine builders who laid the foundations of civilization. The Sphinx could be their legacy, a monument carved not to honor a pharaoh, but to speak to the future, to carry a message across the ages. The Greeks later told of Atlantis, a great civilization swallowed by the sea, its memory preserved only in the writings of Plato. While historians debate the literal truth of Atlantis, the story resonates with a deeper truth. Civilizations can fall, and their memory can vanish, leaving behind only fragments that defy explanation. The Sphinx fits this pattern, standing as a relic too old to fit neatly into known history, its silent form suggesting a world erased, yet not entirely forgotten. Even in Egyptian tradition, hints of cataclysm linger. Texts speak of Zep-Tepi, the first time, a mythical age when gods walked the earth and established order. Some researchers believe Zep-Tepi was not mere myth, but a dimly remembered golden age preserved in ritual and symbol. The Sphinx, they suggest, belongs to that first time, a survivor of a pre-dynastic world swept away by disaster. If the flood myths have any basis in fact, then the builders of the Sphinx may have been among those who endured. Perhaps they carved the monument after the catastrophe as a reminder of what had been lost. Or perhaps it stood before the waters came, a witness to the rising tides, enduring while entire cities vanished beneath the flood. In either case, it connects us to an epoch beyond memory, when human history was not yet divided into nations and dynasties, but was instead a single story scattered by disaster. The possibility of forgotten builders also raises questions about human potential. Could there have been civilizations with knowledge and skills equal to or even surpassing those of later Egypt, yet now erased from the record? If so, their existence challenges the linear view of progress, suggesting instead a cycle of rise and fall, memory and loss. The Sphinx in this light is not only a monument but a witness, reminding us that human achievement is not always permanent. Survivors of the flood, if they existed, may have sought to preserve what they could, encoding their knowledge in stone, in myth, in symbols that would outlast fire and water. Perhaps they built the Sphinx not as a monument to themselves, but as a beacon, a signal for future generations that the past was not as simple as it seemed. Its silent face may carry the weight of a lost world, speaking without words of a time before time. The notion of a flood and forgotten builders may sound like legend, but legends often serve as vessels for truth. The Sphinx, weathered yet enduring, is the physical embodiment of that possibility. If it survived a cataclysm, then it is more than a monument of stone. It is a survivor bearing silent witness to an age erased, yet not entirely lost. And if such a monument could preserve the memory of a lost civilization, what else might remain hidden, waiting to be revealed? Legends speak of a library, a hall filled with the records of that forgotten age, a treasure not of gold or jewels, but of knowledge itself. To explore that legend, we must turn to the idea of the Hall of Records. The possibility that the Sphinx predates the pharaohs inevitably draws us toward one of the most persistent themes in ancient myth, the memory of a great flood. Across cultures, from the stories of Mesopotamia to the biblical account of Noah, from Hindu epics to Native American traditions, echoes of a cataclysm resound, a deluge that swept across the earth, erasing civilizations, cleansing the world, and leaving only fragments of what once was. Could the Sphinx itself be one of those fragments, a survivor from a forgotten world drowned beneath the tides of time? Geological evidence tells us that the Sahara was not always the desert we see today. Thousands of years ago, it was green, watered by rains and rivers, a fertile land capable of sustaining life on a scale unimaginable in the current climate. If the Sphinx bears marks of rainfall, it must have witnessed that earlier world, one that faded long before the age of the pyramids. Its very erosion becomes a testimony to an environment that no longer exists, and to builders who lived in a time far different from our own. This vision aligns with the flood myths. Imagine a civilization thriving in the fertile lands of a prehistoric Nile, building monuments not as tombs or temples, but as records, as anchors of memory designed to outlast destruction. Then came the flood. Whether caused by melting glaciers, rising seas, or cosmic events, the waters surged across continents, erasing cities and scattering survivors. When the waters receded, much had been lost, but the Sphinx remained, scarred yet unbroken, a monument that still stood to tell a story no one could fully understand. Myths often describe survivors who preserved fragments of their knowledge, passing it on to future generations. In Egypt, this memory may have taken shape in the myths of Thoth, the god of wisdom, or in stories of divine builders who laid the foundations of civilization. The Sphinx could be their legacy, a monument carved not to honor a pharaoh, but to speak to the future, to carry a message across the ages. The Greeks later told of Atlantis, a great civilization swallowed by the sea, its memory preserved only in the writings of Plato. While historians debate the literal truth of Atlantis, the story resonates with a deeper truth. Civilizations can fall and their memory can vanish, leaving behind only fragments that defy explanation. The Sphinx fits this pattern, standing as a relic too old to fit neatly into known history, its silent form suggesting a world erased, yet not entirely forgotten. Even in Egyptian tradition, hints of cataclysm linger. Texts speak of Zep-Tepi, the first time, a mythical age when gods walked the earth and established order. Some researchers believe Zep-Tepi was not mere myth, but a dimly remembered golden age preserved in ritual and symbol. The Sphinx, they suggest, belongs to that first time, a survivor of a pre-dynastic world swept away by disaster. If the flood myths have any basis in fact, then the builders of the Sphinx may have been among those who endured. Perhaps they carved the monument after the catastrophe as a reminder of what had been lost. Or perhaps it stood before the waters came, a witness to the rising tides, enduring while entire cities vanished beneath the flood. In either case, it connects us to an epoch beyond memory, when human history was not yet divided into nations and dynasties, but was instead a single story scattered by disaster. The possibility of forgotten builders also raises questions about human potential. Could there have been civilizations with knowledge and skills equal to or even surpassing those of later Egypt, yet now erased from the record? If so, their existence challenges the linear view of progress, suggesting instead a cycle of rise and fall, memory and loss. The Sphinx in this light is not only a monument but a witness, reminding us that human achievement is not always permanent. Survivors of the flood, if they existed, may have sought to preserve what they could, encoding their knowledge in stone, in myth, in symbols that would outlast fire and water. Perhaps they built the Sphinx not as a monument to themselves, but as a beacon, a signal for future generations that the past was not as simple as it seemed. Its silent face may carry the weight of a lost world, speaking without words of a time before time. The notion of a flood and forgotten builders may sound like legend, but legends often serve as vessels for truth. The Sphinx, weathered yet enduring, is the physical embodiment of that possibility. If it survived a cataclysm, then it is more than a monument of stone. It is a survivor bearing silent witness to an age erased, yet not entirely lost. And if such a monument could preserve the memory of a lost civilization, what else might remain hidden, waiting to be revealed? Legends speak of a library, a hall filled with the records of that forgotten age, a treasure not of gold or jewels, but of knowledge itself. To explore that legend, we must turn to the idea of the Hall of Records. The Sphinx speaks no words, yet its form is a message. Carved from the bedrock of the plateau, its proportions, its orientation, and its features may encode truths hidden in plain sight. To those who study ancient symbolism, the Sphinx is not only a guardian of chambers, but a riddle written in stone, a message that points to the heavens and to the cycles of time itself. Its eastward gaze is the first clue. Every morning the Sphinx greets the rising sun, a daily resurrection that mirrored the beliefs of the ancient Egyptians. But more than a simple alignment, some argue that its position points to specific epochs in the great cycle of precession, a 26,000-year wobble of the Earth that shifts the stars across the horizon. At certain times, the constellation of Leo would have risen directly before the Sphinx, suggesting that the monument was designed as a marker of cosmic time. If the Sphinx was carved when Leo rose at the dawn, then its age may stretch back to around 10,500 BCE, long before the pharaohs, long before recorded history. In that era, the Sphinx would not only have been aligned with the constellation of the Lion, but also with the stars of Orion, which many researchers associate with the pyramids themselves. This alignment hints at a grand design, a message inscribed in both earth and sky, pointing to a forgotten age of cosmic awareness. The fusion of human and lion in the Sphinx's body also carries symbolic weight. The lion represents strength, the king of beasts, tied to the sun and to fire. The human face represents consciousness, intellect, and divine order. Combined, they form a symbol of mastery, the union of spirit and matter, man and cosmos. This is no mere decoration, but a statement of cosmic truth, carved to endure when words and dynasties would fade. Scholars of sacred geometry see further meaning in the proportions of the monument. Ratios within its body reflect patterns found in nature, in music, in the orbits of planets. Such harmonies suggest deliberate design, as if the Sphinx were not just a statue but a mathematical message, a key to understanding the universe written in form rather than language. If this is true, then the monument is itself a kind of record, one that cannot be burned or erased, a library written in stone. Even its scars may carry meaning. The Sphinx, half buried and uncovered across centuries, becomes a mirror of humanity itself, forgotten and rediscovered, lost and remembered, yet always carrying within it the potential for truth. The Sphinx is not alone in speaking this silent language. Across the world, megalithic monuments align with the stars, encode mathematical knowledge, and embody symbols of balance and duality. The Sphinx fits into this global pattern, a reminder that ancient builders possessed a wisdom we often underestimate, a wisdom that fused art, science, and spirituality into a single expression. To ignore this symbolism is to miss the deeper message of the monument. The Sphinx was not simply carved to impress or to guard. It was created to communicate across ages, to point to truths larger than any one civilization. Its silence is not emptiness but fullness, waiting for those who know how to read its language. The more one studies its form, the more one senses that it is not random, not merely the work of artists and masons, but of visionaries who sought to bridge the gap between man and cosmos. Whether through alignments, proportions, or symbols, the Sphinx whispers in a language of stone, telling us that the past is deeper, the cosmos closer, and the human story greater than we imagine. And yet, despite these messages in plain sight, attempts to explore the Sphinx more directly have often been met with obstacles. Digging beneath the monument, probing its foundations, has always been fraught with secrecy, restriction, and unanswered questions. The story of these excavations is as mysterious as the monument itself. The history of excavations around the Sphinx is as shadowed as the monument's face at dusk. For centuries, explorers, scholars, and dreamers sought to uncover what lay beneath, yet their efforts were often blocked, abandoned, or silenced. The very ground around the Sphinx seems to resist intrusion, guarded not only by stone and sand, but by secrecy and authority. One of the earliest large-scale attempts came during the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, who claimed in his famous dream stele that the Sphinx spoke to him in a vision, promising kingship if he cleared the sands from its body. His excavation was not to discover chambers, but to reveal the buried form of the monument itself. Yet the stele hints at a deeper connection, suggesting that the Sphinx was already ancient and sacred, its hidden meaning known only to the chosen. Centuries later, when Napoleon's armies entered Egypt, his scholars documented the Sphinx and its surroundings. They too cleared sand, revealing more of its body, yet records suggest they may have noticed openings or fissures near its pores. Rumors claim that attempts were made to probe deeper, but if so, their results never reached the public. The monument's silence remained unbroken. In the 19th and 20th centuries, further excavations were carried out, often uncovering new details of the monument's structure. Yet each attempt to explore beneath the Sphinx met obstacles. Permissions were restricted, findings unpublished, anomalies left unexplored. The sands were removed, yet the mystery remained, as though some invisible line had been drawn that explorers dared not cross. Whispers persist of secret digs, of discoveries made and concealed. Some claim that in the modern era, institutions carried out investigations beneath the Sphinx, finding chambers but withholding the evidence. Whether true or not, the secrecy surrounding the site fuels suspicion. Why should so many studies vanish into silence unless there is something too disruptive to reveal? The restrictions on excavation have been explained as preservation, protecting the monument from damage. Yet the strictness of these rules, the refusal even to allow non-invasive exploration at times, raises questions. To seekers, this is not protection, but concealment, a deliberate effort to keep hidden whatever lies beneath. The mystery becomes not only about what is under the Sphinx, but about who decides what we are allowed to know. Stories tell of blocked tunnels, sealed doors, and cavities glimpsed but never entered. Each fragment of rumor adds to the aura of forbidden knowledge. Some imagine priesthoods of old, sworn to protect the secret. Others suspect modern institutions, fearful of rewriting history. Whoever the guardians may be, their silence only deepens the mystery. The Sphinx itself seems to encourage this secrecy. Its enigmatic face, its half-buried form, its scars of age all suggest a monument that survives not to reveal, but to conceal. To stand before it is to feel the weight of something deliberately withheld, a truth not yet permitted to surface. Perhaps the Sphinx's greatest secret is not simply what lies beneath, but the struggle between revelation and concealment that has surrounded it for centuries. Each attempt to uncover its hidden depths ends in silence. Each study that hints at anomalies is quickly dismissed or buried. The pattern repeats generation after generation, leaving the impression that we stand on the edge of discovery, yet never crossed the threshold. The forbidden excavations become part of the riddle itself, a reminder that some knowledge is not easily given. And so the Sphinx continues to guard its secret, not only with stone and sand, but with the silence of those who seek to control its mystery. The question remains, are they protecting the monument or protecting the secret? Whatever the answer, the Sphinx watches unchanging as humanity circles ever closer to truths it may or may not be ready to face. The presence of secrecy, of guardianship, suggests that the Sphinx's mystery is not forgotten, but actively protected. Which leads us to the next question. Who are the guardians of this secret, and why do they continue to keep it hidden? If the Sphinx conceals truths beneath its pores or within its stone body, then who has kept this knowledge hidden for so long? The idea that its mystery has survived millennia untouched suggests more than chance. It suggests guardianship, an unbroken chain of secrecy stretching from ancient priesthoods to modern institutions, ensuring that whatever lies beneath the sands remains beyond the reach of ordinary eyes. In ancient Egypt, knowledge was never freely given. Priests controlled access to sacred wisdom, preserving their secrets in temples, scrolls, and rituals hidden from the public. They were more than servants of the gods. They were custodians of memory, entrusted with protecting truths too powerful to share openly. If the Sphinx guarded a chamber or a message, it is likely these priesthoods were its first guardians, weaving its purpose into myth and ceremony while keeping its literal secret sealed beneath stone. The pharaohs themselves may have been part of this guardianship. Kings derived their authority from divine order, the Mahat that bound the cosmos together. To reveal a truth older than their dynasties, one that suggested their power was inherited rather than absolute, might have threatened their reign. So the secret would remain hidden, absorbed into ritual, honored in silence, but never revealed to the common people. As centuries passed and Egypt's dynasties fell, new rulers and new cultures encountered the Sphinx. Persians, Greeks, Romans, and Arabs all stood before it, marveling at its presence, yet none revealed its secret. Perhaps they did not know. Or perhaps fragments of the guardianship survived, passed from one order to another, reshaped into new myths, but always protecting the same concealed truth. The medieval chroniclers who spoke of chambers beneath the Sphinx often hinted at curses and dangers awaiting those who tried to uncover them. This was not only superstition, but a way of warning off intruders. To guard a secret requires not only silence, but fear, the sense that certain knowledge is forbidden. The legend of guardianship thus became entwined with tales of disaster befalling those who dared to disturb the Sphinx. In more modern times, the guardianship may have shifted from priesthoods to institutions. Archaeological authorities restrict access, governments regulate excavations, and findings vanish into obscurity. Some say this is done to protect the monument, to preserve heritage. Others whisper that the real reason is to protect the secret itself, a truth that could upend the accepted narrative of human history. Imagine the consequences if a chamber beneath the Sphinx were revealed to contain records of a civilization older than Egypt, perhaps even older than recorded history itself. Such a discovery would shake the foundations of academia, religion, and culture. For those in power, the risk of such upheaval might be too great, making concealment the safer path. Guardianship in this sense is not merely about preserving stone, but about preserving the order of the world. The secrecy that surrounds the Sphinx today has the same flavor as the ancient priesthoods' silence. Both operate on the belief that some truths are not meant to be widely known. Perhaps the guardians believe that humanity is not ready, that such revelations could cause chaos or misuse. Or perhaps the secret is not only historical, but cosmic, containing knowledge about our origins and our place in the universe that would shatter the fragile frameworks we live within. Guardianship then becomes a theme woven through the ages, from priests to kings, from chroniclers to governments. Each generation takes its place in the chain, whether knowingly or not. The Sphinx itself seems to require this protection, as if the secret it holds is not merely fragile, but dangerous, something that can only be revealed when the time is right. To many seekers, this secrecy is not a barrier, but a challenge. The very existence of guardians suggests that the treasure is real, that the mystery is not an empty illusion, but a truth too potent to be left unguarded. The silence of the Sphinx is mirrored by the silence of its keepers, both holding back a story that may change everything we think we know. If the guardians of the Sphinx are protecting knowledge too vast for one people, one nation, or even one age, then it raises a profound question. Is the Sphinx merely a monument of Egypt, or part of a greater network of enigmas scattered across the earth? To answer that, we must look beyond the sands of Giza and listen for echoes of its mystery in distant lands. The Sphinx does not stand alone. Across the world, monuments rise from the earth, bearing scars of antiquity and whispers of forgotten knowledge. From the megaliths of Turkey to the jungles of South America, from the highlands of Peru to the temples of Asia, we find echoes of the same mystery. Structures too ancient, too precise, too enigmatic to fit neatly into the history we know. Taken together, they form a pattern as though scattered pieces of a puzzle waiting to be reassembled. One of the most striking parallels lies at Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey. Buried for thousands of years and only recently uncovered, this site contains massive stone pillars arranged in circles, carved with animal figures and symbols. It dates back to around 10,000 BCE, long before the rise of Egypt or Mesopotamia, yet it shows advanced planning, artistry, and symbolic depth. Like the Sphinx, it suggests that sophisticated culture existed far earlier than our textbooks allow. In South America, the pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico and the megalithic stones of Sacsayhuaman in Peru reveal the same theme. Vast blocks of stone, some weighing hundreds of tons, are fitted together with precision that defies explanation. Their builders remain largely unknown, their methods mysterious. Like the Sphinx, they stand as survivors of a forgotten age, monuments that should not exist according to conventional history. The pyramids of Mesoamerica echo those of Egypt, though separated by oceans and thousands of years. Both align with celestial bodies, both encode astronomical cycles, both suggest a preoccupation with connecting heaven and earth. Could these similarities be coincidence, or do they point to a shared legacy, a memory of a world that once spanned continents? Legends from these regions speak of gods or culture bringers who arrived after a great flood, teaching survivors the arts of building, farming, and astronomy. In Mesoamerica, they spoke of Quetzalcoatl. In Mesopotamia, of Oannes. In Egypt, of Thoth. The pattern repeats. Knowledge comes from mysterious figures after a catastrophe, knowledge that seems too advanced to have sprung from nothing. If we weave these stories together, a picture emerges of a lost world, a civilization shattered by disaster, yet remembered in fragments across the globe. Its survivors carried their wisdom to distant lands, carving it into stone, aligning it with the stars, leaving monuments that would outlast the rise and fall of nations. The Sphinx may be one of the greatest of these monuments, but it is not alone. Even in remote places like Easter Island, the Moai statues stare out across the ocean with the same silent watchfulness as the Sphinx. Though different in style and culture, they too embody the theme of guardianship, of stone figures keeping vigil over mysteries we no longer understand. The parallels invite us to see the Sphinx not as an isolated wonder, but as part of a worldwide pattern of enigmatic monuments. What connects these sites is not only their mystery, but their persistence. They defy the passage of time, surviving floods, earthquakes, conquest, and neglect. Like the Sphinx, they remain when everything around them has crumbled, suggesting that their builders intended them to last beyond memory, to speak to ages yet unborn. If all these sites are fragments of a larger whole, then perhaps they point back to a single source, a civilization that predated Egypt, Atlantis, or any name we know, a civilization that understood the cycles of the stars and the fragility of human memory. Its monuments became messages scattered like seeds across the earth, waiting for a time when humanity would gather them together. The Sphinx, then, is not just Egypt's riddle. It is part of a global chorus, a single voice in a song sung by stone across continents. To listen to it fully, we must see it not as an isolated monument, but as a companion to temples, pyramids, and statues across the world. Together they form an echo of a lost world, a whisper of a past that refuses to die, urging us to look beyond the sands, beyond the ruins, and into the forgotten chapters of human history. The Great Sphinx of Giza remains what it has always been, a riddle carved into stone, staring across the desert with eyes that have seen empires rise and fall. It has survived sandstorms, floods, conquests, and centuries of speculation, yet it keeps its silence. The more we study it, the more we realize how much we do not know. And perhaps that is its greatest power. It draws us closer with every unanswered question, every whisper of chambers beneath, every scar upon its body that tells of an age we have forgotten. We have followed its story through myths and chronicles, through the erosion of stone and the legends of floods, through whispers of hidden chambers and guardianship of secrets. Each thread leads us deeper into a tapestry of mystery, one that stretches across the world and connects the Sphinx to other enigmatic monuments from distant lands. And yet, even with all these connections, the Sphinx does not yield. It stands in silence, daring us to keep searching. Perhaps this is its true purpose, not to give us answers, but to awaken the questions that lie dormant within us, to remind us that history is not a closed book, but a story still unfolding, still waiting to be uncovered. The Sphinx does not tell us what it has seen, but it invites us to imagine, to wonder, to dream of civilizations older than memory and truths older than Egypt. The stone face, weathered yet enduring, reminds us that time itself is a mystery, and that knowledge can be both revealed and concealed in ways we cannot easily understand. The Sphinx keeps its secrets because perhaps we are not yet ready to hear them. Or perhaps its silence is the message itself, that the search for truth is never finished, that mystery is as eternal as the desert sky. When we stand before it, we do not only look at stone, we look into a mirror of our own desire to understand who we are, where we come from, and what has been lost along the way. The Sphinx does not answer, but it does not need to. It has endured for thousands of years, and it will endure thousands more, keeping its vigil while we continue to seek. The riddle remains unsolved, and that is why the Sphinx still captivates us. It is a challenge carved into the earth itself, a silent guardian of time that demands patience, humility, and imagination. To study it is to admit that the past is deeper and stranger than we can ever fully grasp. To wonder at it is to step beyond the boundaries of what we know and into the vast realm of what we have forgotten. And so, the Sphinx waits. It will continue to wait as the desert sands rise and fall, as the stars shift across the sky, as new generations come to ask the same questions once asked by pharaohs, by chroniclers, by explorers, and by dreamers. Its silence is eternal, but its mystery lives within us, urging us onward in the search for truth. The story of the Sphinx is not finished because the story of humanity is not finished. Perhaps one day its secret will be revealed, or perhaps its purpose is to remain a riddle so that we continue to look, to question, and to seek. Whatever lies beneath its paws, whatever truth its guardians protect, the Sphinx has already achieved what no monument could do more perfectly. It has kept alive the flame of wonder. And now, as we step away from its silent gaze, the question remains with us. What lies beneath the Sphinx? A chamber of records, a message from a lost civilization, or simply the silence of stone? The answer may come in time. Until then, the Great Sphinx of Giza stands as it always has, the silent guardian of secrets older than Egypt. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and ancient secrets, remember to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next story. Leave a like if the film sparked your imagination, share your thoughts in the comments, and most importantly, pass this video on to your friends and family who share a love for history and hidden knowledge. Together we keep the search alive, and together we continue to look beyond the sands of time.